Hey, Bob Cooney here with another edition of the Being Virtual Show Deep Dive, where I just kind of find somebody doing really interesting stuff in the world of virtual reality, and we go deep with them, and we try to understand their journey as an entrepreneur, as a person, what got them to where they are, what they're doing, and how it might impact the world. So today, I am really freaking excited. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, as you guys probably know, and there was a post from AJ Dr Doom from Liv, and they've created the first kind of streaming platform for creators in virtual reality, and they had just done a deal with Meta, and I was fascinated by his journey because he's been doing this for 7 years, ups and downs, and there's a lot of talk these days about Sherlocking, where a company creates something and then the big company comes in and just implements that same technology into the base platform and essentially puts them out of business. And there's a big narrative around that within the entrepreneurial community. Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it evil? What do you do about it? And I think AJ's got a great story to tell, which is going to be not only inspiring but informative to any entrepreneur that's working in any kind of fast evolving technology space, about what it takes to, stay in the game, and how do you do this, and how do you get to the point where you build enough value where that big company who might be a competitor looks at you and says, okay, we give up and we're just going to work with you. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Doom.
Here we are. Hello, sir.
Hey, man, so glad to have you here.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
So let's start out the name. I know you've probably been asked this a million times, but you go by Dr. Doom. You've created that persona online. Where does it come from?
I used to play competitive fighting games, and my character was a character called Dr. Doom, a game called Marvel vs. Capcom. I vividly remember going to my first tournament in London in the Trocadero in Piccadilly Circus, and I walked into the tournament, and I met a guy who I had never met in the real world, but only played with online for a long time. And as I reached out and shook his hand, I said, "Hey, my name is AJ. What's your name?" And he goes, "My name is Chrome Alchemist." And I realized he only knows me as Dr. Doom, which was my character and my name online. And that sort of became the beginning of, as I'm online, I'm just going to introduce myself as my online handle. People know me like that already. Uh, Over the last 7 years, it's become like a long Family Guy joke where the longer you do it, it just gets better and better. You just extend it into infinity. In the beginning, people are like, who does that? But here we are 7 years later. It's kind of worked out. So it's exciting. I think it's really fun. I usually go on stage with a mask. I have a Dr. Doom mask. I don't have it with me here, but that's effectively it.
Awesome. We need the AR overlay mask. That should be easy enough today, but maybe next time.
Next time.
So look, let's start. Let's just start in the beginning, right? So you started out, as you said, as a competitive gamer, and then you had this vision around Liv, and talk a little bit about how that what that transition was, and what the vision was, and how it came to pass.
Totally. So I lived in a co-living space in San Francisco back in 2015, 2016, where I met my co-founder, Six. Six was working on building VR PCs under the brand Liv. And we had seen the early Steam VR trailers. If you remember them, they had a tilt brush trailer where they had mixed reality. It was a custom implementation by Valve. In fact, in the early days, a lot of the Unity-based games had the primitive implementation of mixed reality capture built into the games. It was awful to set up. You had to use OBS and a bunch of various sources, and it took hours to do. And we thought it was fascinating. We set out to do more of that ourselves. Initially, we were building a green cube called the Liv Cube, which was just a pop-up green screen studio with lights and a PC. And we would go to events with it. We did CES and DEF CON and a whole bunch of cool places where we would show up and just show people, hey, here's what you could look like when you're playing VR. And one of our light bulb moments was we were at DEF CON in Vegas, and we had a big green lit up cube and a monitor above, and a line around the corner going out of the venue. And we saw that for every person that went into the cube, everyone else would take their phone out to film the screen because it's such a spectacle to see a person inside a game. That was sort of our light bulb moment. If VR and AR is going to be a big platform in the future, the next computing platform, chances are that developers and creators will need tooling to be able to share their experiences with their friends, family, and fans. And that's been our mission for the last 7 years, to help you in VR and AR inside of your favorite apps, typically games, but really works inside any application, to be able to capture that authentically without any fakeness or post effects or VFX, and then share that with your community.
Yeah, cool. And now the first time I think I came across your platform, you did an early integration with this little game from a little studio somewhere in Eastern Europe, some music rhythm game that nobody had ever heard of. How did that happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I lived in the Czech Republic in Prague. I moved there because we hired an engineer. Our first hire was a gentleman called Jaroslav Štelik, based in the Czech Republic. We asked him to come move out to us in Europe. We were initially going to open up an office in Amsterdam or Berlin. He has a wife and a place to live. He wasn't ready to uproot his life. I don't have anything, so I was happy to go to him, and I took our CTO with us. And so we set up shop in Prague. Yaroslav happened to have worked with Jan, the original developer of Beat Saber, which is, of course, the game. Um, and he had a good relationship with them. Beat Saber actually had initially planned to build their own MRC implementation because they realized the value of being able to show a person do those crazy moves in sort of real time. And we graciously asked them to please let us do it for you. We're focused on this. We'd love to do it. We know exactly how to do it. And after a couple of weeks, they allowed us to. We did the integration with them. We had an SDK already at the time, and launched it in May 2018. And I think the rest is history. Within the first day, we went crazy viral. 20 million views over 24 hours. Within 3 months, we had 500 million views. Those videos went everywhere in the world. We had folks in Korea, in India, in China, in all of Europe, and all of the West, pinging us, asking us if we could use the videos on their channels, if they can attribute us back. And, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Unexpected, unplanned, and completely out of control.
Yeah, and those guys did okay in the end.
You could say that, yeah. The Mario of VR, if anything.
Yeah, so good. I love seeing people be successful. Like I know how hard it is and how much work goes into it. And so when they announced that deal, I was like, yes. And then I realized, oh shit, we're gonna lose it in the arcades, but whatever. Um, so so you got massive awareness from that, and you would think that that would be a launch pad as an entrepreneur, right? And then what happened next?
It certainly was. I think a lot of developers realized that if we implement Live, we may have a small chance to get the same type of outcomes that Beat Saber did. In other words, they want virality because virality means sales, and certainly Beat Saber benefited tons from that virality. So we started doing a bunch of integrations. We actually started streaming on Twitch with an early version of Live inside some of those integrations. That's how we got the early community. So I would go on Twitch, put the headset on with Live running in the background, and just showcase what the tooling can do as a fellow nerd and gamer. And when we opened up our Discord, we anticipated our fans joining. We had a pretty big fan base on Twitch at the time. But what really ended up happening was that all the other VR streamers at the time, which in the beginning was 25, 30 folks, really, really small, they all came in and they were in part a little bit annoyed at us for showing up out of nowhere and having this really cool way of broadcasting VR. But also hidden in that message was, please, can you give us access? We would love to be able to do this ourselves. And so fast forward until May 2018 when we launched the Live app, of course. And then a couple months after that, we started releasing the app and the SDK, did a bunch of integrations and lots of steps happening there. But that's effectively how it started.
And how did you monetize in the early days? And then we'll talk about how that might have changed, because one of the, I do go to market strategy for a living. And one of the challenges in this industry is making money, right? I mean, there's a lot of excitement and a lot of cool shit, but there's not many people really making money in the VR business. And so what was it like in the early days trying to monetize the tech?
We set out on a mission to make sure that we could help developers and creators. And especially in the early days, this is largely true today, although increasingly less so, developers don't have any money. So we couldn't charge developers. If we wanted to get into the game, we had to give them the SDK for free. And so we set out a goal to always ensure that the core capabilities should be available to everyone permissionlessly. It's MIT licensed, anyone can use it, because we want to be in every game and on every platform. On the creator side, the same is true. I mean, content creators typically aren't that wealthy unless you go to the biggest ones in the world. The power law is very heavy in entertainment, as you know. So a small number of creators drive the vast majority of outcomes.
Yeah, there's Marquez Brownlee and everybody else in my mind, right?
Basically. I'll give you an interesting stat. The top 25 creators on Twitch drive over half the minutes watched on the entire platform.
Yeah.
That's how top heavy it is.
Yeah.
And so in VR, that is particularly a problem because in VR, people had no following at the time, and therefore we couldn't charge them either. So Liv has been free and was free for the longest time and remains free today. If you're a creator or you're a game developer, you can use Liv permissionlessly and free in perpetuity. And we are sticking by that. We want to make sure that we stick to those ground rules that we set out 7 years ago.
So how do you make money?
We didn't for the longest time. We managed to convince a bunch of really smart people with deep pockets that indeed what we build is really important for the ecosystem. It's important because effectively developers and creators need these tools to broadcast their experiences. It helps them sell more copies and it helps creators drive more eyeballs to themselves. And fundamentally, the belief is at some point VR and AR is going to be big. And when it is big, we'll have other avenues that we will be able to monetize this entrenchment that we've built up over the years. And it's only, as you know, technically 6 months ago, but effectively announced a couple of weeks ago, where we're now making meaningful revenue on the work that we're doing because of partnerships like Meta.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that in a sec. But so when you were fighting to stay alive, my words, not yours, but been through enough wars to know that that might have been what it felt like. And you're looking to raise money. How did you? Because this is the thing, everybody in the industry, like there's a lot of people trying to raise money, and there's very little money coming into VR right now. And so, what was your story? Did you know that was going to be the case? Did you know that, hey, we're not going to be able to monetize this for a while? And did you just get lucky enough to find investors who were insanely patient? Or what was the story then? And how did you find investors who were willing to stick with you, assuming you did? And what advice do you have for entrepreneurs in the space now that are faced with a similar story?
Yeah, it's really hard because the market changes up and down. Like, for example, now 2024 is a terrible year for raising. So I wouldn't say that this advice may apply to everyone. I think in our case, we approach it as market grab. We want to be everywhere. Our value comes from being entrenched in every game, on every device, in every creator's hand. And we had early indication that indeed is true. In the early 2018 days, we had global virality. And there was a lot of that helping investors believe in our vision that not only is this a spectacle to watch, which means people will watch it if people make those videos, but also we are indeed in lots and lots of games. And we were integrating like crazy in a bunch of games. That was the early raise. And we raised in the beginning just under $1 million. We did Techstars in LA, which is an accelerator. And we raised about 300,000 in total following that. So that helped a lot, of course, getting us in front of early investors. And then we raised 700,000. And one of the key unlocks for us, which unfortunately is not advice because it's hard to make that happen, is we got Palmer Luckey to invest in Liv, one of the few investments that he's made. And this is one of these sort of dark secrets of the investment world, which I wish it wasn't like this because it does feel a bit dirty in a way. And that is that a lot of investors don't really think of due diligence the way maybe you would expect them to. A lot of it is sort of signaling and finding proxies for what might be a good investment. And the proxy here was if the founder of modern day VR gave them money, chances are they're onto something that maybe I, the investor who just came into VR, doesn't quite understand or doesn't quite grok yet. So that helped us in the early days. And that's certainly we're on Series A now. We're going to be doing our Series B mid next year. The story changes as you go through those years, but that's how we started at least.
Yeah, that's great. And look, I see it even in the VC market. Like we see, I've raised 9 figures of capital, serious 9 figures, not just breaking the barrier. And there's, VCs, they just want to know who else is involved. And once you get a lead, then there's leaders and followers. And And it's that way in the professional investing community too. And so, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. So there's a good tip is go find somebody who's famous, who's got great credibility, get them in early, and then it'll make your fundraising easier. I think it's a little known strategy, but it works.
One thing I think is important to call out is it's not really a charlatan strategy, or like it's not mischievous in any way. It's finding someone who understands the market you're in deeply and can connect the same dots that you connected. I mean, we're doing it because we believe in it, and we believe in it because we think we have a good intuition for where this is going. And that intuition is built from those experiences of being in the market. And therefore, if you find someone who spent as much time in the market, who just has deeper pockets than you do, you can probably get quite far, assuming you're building something that is indeed valuable.
Yeah, totally. And look, and there's a celebrity angle. Like I know Sandbox got some celebrities involved really early, and some of them actually know quite a bit about VR, but a lot of them don't. And this isn't the celebrity angle you're talking about, though Palmer's certainly a celebrity within the VR community. It's like, how do you tap into the community and find the celebrity within the community who actually understands the ecosystem? And I think that's, really well done. Great point.
So I want to say, I'm noticing my eyes are going to the left. That's because your screen is on my left. So I'm looking at you. I'm not looking.
Yeah, that's all right. I know it's always hard. I'm trying to look at the camera. You're down there. It's always there's a platform called Descript, which I love, by the way, free plug. I don't have anything to do with it, but they've implemented this tech where it automatically takes your eyes, no matter what you're looking at, and puts it towards the camera. And I don't know why StreamYard, Apple with the iPhone, like I'm using this continuity camera. I'm using my iPhone camera as a webcam. Like, fucking build that shit in, everybody. What are you waiting for? Sorry.
I wonder how effective that will be, though, because I think sometimes the way you use your eyes actually indicates a little bit of what you're saying and how you're presenting. So, like nonverbal communication.
Yeah, it works pretty well from what I've seen, but it is, it's a valid question. I think the biggest thing with online communication is connection, right? And if you're looking at the camera, people feel like they're speaking to you. And then when I look down at you, because I actually want to be connected to you, so I want to see what you're doing, I'm not looking at the camera. And so it's like when I'm speaking, I'm trying to speak at the camera, and when I'm not, I'm looking at the screen. And the little challenges of doing online video for those of you that care. So all right, so you went through this thing, and then so mixed reality became a thing, and it became kind of like a must-have tool in the toolkit of any game developer if they wanted to build audience, because we know VR games, the hardest thing to do in VR is sell VR, right? Like it's TV on the radio. How do you sell TV on the radio? How do you sell VR unless you're in the experience? And you guys kind of unlocked that toolkit for people to give people a sense of it. And then and if I jump over anything important, tell me, but when they released the Quest, they started putting real marketing dollars behind it and did a phenomenal job of using mixed reality in their TV commercials and their online commercials. And so you would have watched that. I'm assuming they didn't use your platform to do it, or maybe they did. They did.
That's what happened. So the first official Quest 1 trailer, the Defy Reality trailers, we worked with them on it. We built a really early version of a Quest 1 mixed reality solution. And so those trailers were all filmed with Liv. And then I think what happened internally was they saw the power of that, and they thought, this is key capabilities that we need on the platform. And I agree, for what it's worth. I do think every headset requires some solution like this.
And it needs to be easy.
It needs to be easy. And, all credit to Meta, honestly. Like, I think we would have done the same thing if I was Zuckerberg or I was running the company. Yeah, we have terrific engineers on the team. We own our own APIs and our own platform.
We're investing $10 billion a year, right? We should be able to do this.
Totally. And what we found in the early days was, and this, we're doing that research again now because it's been so many years since then, but we found that when you use a mixed reality trailer on the storefront, you typically convert better. You sell more. And, if you look at the Meta Quest platform now, they do $1 billion a year in storefront revenue. If you get a 10% uplift, that's $100 million extra sales, just because you have good capabilities to film great trailers and great marketing collateral. And that's not even counting the benefit of content creators making videos on YouTube and Twitch that get millions of views and drive the long tail attention back to the platform.
They cost nothing to the developer or the platform.
Exactly. If anything, it's just benefit. It's pure benefit for everyone involved. So they started building their own tooling, and I've always said it. It's been like a friendly competition with Meta. My approach with Meta has always been: I love to do things transparently. Here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. Here's what we believe in and our moral compass. And tell us what you want to do with it. If you want to build it yourself, awesome. See you on the battlefield. If you end up realizing that was the wrong choice, awesome. We'll be here. And I think that mentality has really helped us to not feel. I actually don't know the term Sherlock. I don't really get the analogy because Sherlock is a detective, and
Sherlock was an app, and it was like one of the first examples of an app that got basically rolled. The features got rolled into an OS, and so they call it being Sherlocked. Yeah, I don't even know what the app was, to be honest with you. Yeah,
I must say I just disagree with that premise again because I would have done the same thing. And
me too.
Transparently, we did the same things. We acquired the first calibration app and the only calibration app for mixed reality and integrated it into platform. That was Jaroslav Stelik. That's how we started working together. We also acquired a depth-based background removal solution by a young kid at the time called Giant Socks, David Goodman, terrific engineer, and integrated that into our tooling. So if we were Meta and we were doing the same thing, people would have pointed the same fingers at us and said, you're doing all the things that are anti-competitive. But in reality, they're simply doing what is good for their platform. And I have this sneaky suspicion that people somehow they have this expectation of big companies that they just should work with you. But there's nothing to say that that's true. They are their own people with their own goals and ambitions, with terrifically smart people on the team, and they have all the rights to build these things themselves. Now, if they mislead you in that process, I will agree. I think that's wrong. And I've heard some stories, like, for example, with virtual desktop, where things have been a little bit dicey. But I would say beyond virtual desktop and how they handle the platform fee for apps like Big Screen, I think a lot of the other ones that are complaining, I think, are just categorically wrong. They should have just kept building because they will do a better job than Meta at the one thin sliver that they're focused on. Just like eventually that turned out to be true with us. We knew we're going to do it better than them if we just stick to it.
And there's a couple of things of gold that I'm going to try to pick out of that, what you just said. And so the first thing I want to ask about is the mindset, right? And so you have a mindset that allows you to believe this story that you just weaved, that you told, and reality is just a series of stories that we agree with, which is that everybody has the right to develop their product the way they want to develop it. And I think a lot of founders, they think the idea is the thing. It was my idea, therefore, I should get all the benefits that anyone reaps from my idea. And one of the most popular posts I've ever done on LinkedIn was a Steve Jobs video that I commented on where he talked about the rock tumbler. And he's like, the ideas are nothing. It's not
my favorite analogy, by the way. That is the analogy I use with a team. That is how it works. You get a bunch of smart people into the room and you butt heads enough until you have a perfectly round circle ball. And that's the process. It's all about execution and not at all about the ideas.
Yeah. And I get a lot of people who haven't built 10 companies that disagree with that foundationally, right? Oh, but the idea. And I'm like, do you have any idea how many ideas I have for businesses on a weekly basis?
Yeah.
2 or 3 a week. They never go anywhere because I don't have the time or the energy to invest in them. And the ones that's the key. It's the investment and the energy that brings something to life that has the value.
And if it wasn't like that, you would expect ideas to be patentable and defensible, but they're not. And there's for good reason. Most ideas are regurgitated and recycled from inspiration that we get online and through our interactions with people. It would make zero sense if that was a reality we lived in, where you can just sit in the room and think about something and now it's yours.
Yeah.
But nothing would be available to anyone ever again.
So where did that mindset come from, do you think, for you?
I don't know, mate. I think it's like maybe my background. I'm a son of refugees. I grew up in a refugee camp in Sweden. We had nothing. And when you have nothing, everything is great. In my head, it was always, I get to work with the smartest people I know. Some of them are my best friends. We get to work on this amazing thing. For me as a gamer, I'm inside the game. Whoa, I'm inside the game. And I get to do it with like we get to decide how to do it. We get to decide our own fate. To me, that was always the ultimate experience. And so I don't think I ever had that feeling of expectation or righteousness in what I think should happen. In fact, I've always said this to pretty much everyone I know. I think the word should leave the English dictionary. It doesn't make sense. Should is a construct of what we believe. Again, should is like in implicitly in the word what we think should happen, but it doesn't work like that.
It's funny. I've actually banned that word from my vernacular, and anytime I use it in quotations because it's always thoughtful, and I hesitate before I use it. But there are sometimes you have to use the word because it's the word to use. But I've actually banned that from my language. It's funny that you say that.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we just we had a belief in what we built. I love the people I worked with. We thought we could do it, and we thought we could do it better than anyone. And that's been maybe, at least in the long term, over the last 7 years, become true. Probably wasn't true when we started, and chances are, if it was true in the beginning, Meta may have just worked with us immediately. But it's a process. And the other thing that I always remind people of, that it doesn't matter if it's Meta or Apple or anyone else. At the end of the day, behind that email or that contact is a human, and the way you make those humans feel impacts how they think about you. I have given this advice to so many people who have struggled with Meta, and I don't think they get it. They have zero responsibility to you. So you just have to make sure that they believe in you and in your vision, and they like to work with you. It's so simple. To me, it's so simple, and I just don't get how people don't see it.
I have a friend, Beth Stanley. She wrote a book called People Buy from People, and it's that exact thing. It's like there's a human connection, and the people have to make decisions. And the companies, these evil empires or whatever you want to call them, are just a group of people who have come together to do a job. And there's culture and a bunch of other things that make it difficult. But yeah, you're spot on. So I sense that what you talked about, and we'll wrap this up and we'll move on to the second part, which is just as important. But you have this sense of gratitude based on your upbringing that leads to a sense of abundance, is the sense that I get, which is we can all be successful. And I don't know, how do you feel? Do you think about abundance as a practice or a term or a belief set? Does that word mean anything to you?
I feel it on a daily basis, but I don't think I think about it intellectually. I think it's just an innate gut feeling. So I don't know if there's any like gold nuggets out of it, and I think it's also really hard to fake. You can't fake gratitude. It's a guttural feeling. It's in your stomach. So it's easy for me. I wish it wasn't. I wish I could say like I did some practices and I read a book and then I
look, there are practices. Like there are people who do gratitude journals and write every day and look for things. There are things we can be grateful for everywhere in our life every day, no matter how bleak it might seem. And for people who don't have that innate belief based on their background and their upbringing, which is where these seeds get planted, then there are ways to do it. But that's not what this is about.
You'll find it interesting. We do all hands every 2 weeks. Guess what we do after every all hands? We've done it for 7 years.
What do you do?
A gratitude session. We all share what we're grateful about. It could be I'm grateful to my girlfriend because she cooked me food while I was stressed, or I'm grateful to Yaroslav because he really helped me out when we were struggling with this code problem. And it's the small things, I think, like you mentioned, culture. I think culture is everything. It drives the organization. It drives people's mindsets. And I don't think people invest in it enough or don't think about it intentionally enough. And maybe that
until it's too late. And then they have to try to change it. And it's hard to change.
Totally.
Yeah. Great insight. Thank you. So the other thing, I want to talk about, and this is something I implore entrepreneurs to do, is go narrow, go deep. Become the best at a very small thing that people need that solves a problem in an industry, in a market, whatever. And don't worry about everybody else. Just worry about the people who the product market fit, as we call it, right? And so, and you mentioned we're going to do this one thing and we're going to do it better than anybody else. Talk a little bit about your mindset and strategy around niches and going narrow. And how did you stay so focused for 7 years? Because that is remarkable to me, because I don't know that I've ever seen a company in a niche like that, in a market that just was so slow to get traction and to monetize, not get distracted by multiple shiny objects and going elsewhere.
Well, I should say we have gotten distracted, just not enough to really divert us off course. There was a period after the initial sort of hype and virality of what we did where we had to figure out how we're going to make money, what's the next step for us, and we did a whole bunch of experimentation. And I think experimentation is healthy. It's the ability to cross things off a list that sit in your head so that they don't bother you when you need to focus. Because otherwise, you're constantly thinking about these optionalities and scenarios that are unrealized. And that means that we have indeed wasted some time at experimenting. I wouldn't say wasted. I'm using that in the crudest sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's really more we invested into verifying our assumptions that indeed what we built is right and that mixed reality and capture tooling is where we should be. So I think that's one thing. The other thing that we found out is we know it works. We've seen it time and time again that even though mixed reality is a thin sliver, we think it's important. We know developers need it and love it. We know creators need it and love it. And the only belief we then need to have is, do we believe there will be more developers in VR? And do we believe there will be more creators in VR? And the answer was a resounding yes. I'll give you an example. We used to get from investors a lot, rightfully so, because for the longest time, the most content was created through only Beat Saber. And the question you'd get is, well, given that you're mostly getting results from Beat Saber, what's to say that that's the last game that you will be popular with? And the answer was always, well, if you believe Beat Saber is the last game to be successful, then VR is doomed. You don't believe in VR. And we don't take that stance. We think Beat Saber is a step. It's like the Super Mario. And now we have thousands of IPs that we all love and care for in console gaming. And it all spawned from a core nugget of a plumber in red. And so that's kind of our approach. We just had a strong belief that this is going to happen, especially for gaming. And I think now, at least with Quest 3, and we're seeing that graph starting going up and to the right on revenue, on monthly active users, and in the small segment on retention and stickiness. It turns out that that was right. But that's basically only a belief. It wasn't based on anything more than we believe this platform works for
Yeah.
the experiences that we are interested in as gamers and as nerds.
And one of the things I suspect, correct me if I'm wrong, that limited the competition in your space was your difficulty monetizing, right? If you'd have found a way to make money right away, you'd have had a whole bunch of competitors, right? And all of a sudden there'd be a race to zero, and yet your difficulty monetizing. I'm assuming you ran a really tight ship financially to be able
I'm
to.
known to be a stickler by our investors. I don't spend any money.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's another clue. In times, there's so many companies depend on investor capital for runway, and so that the fact that you found a niche that you believed in, that you could own and carve out and perfect at a time when there was no competition because there was no money. It's a really interesting paradox there, right? Because investors want to know, well, yeah, but how are you going to make money? How are you going to monetize? How are you going to monetize? And in one way, it's like the fact you couldn't monetize kept this opportunity to you. So when the time was right, you're able to strike a deal that cements your leadership position. And I don't know if investors can get their heads around that
Yeah,
conceptually.
I mean, I think we did have a bunch of competitors along the way, and I think one thing that we did better than anyone was that we were just authentically curious and interested. In the early days of VR, the way it would work is you would go to a developer's Discord, which was a small Discord because the game was small. And what we did was we would play the games and we would give developers feedback on the game without ever mentioning Live, just because we loved what we did and we loved VR. And then at some point we would say, hey, by the way, have you seen my stream? We have this tool that helps you stream the game that we love, that we just play tested and gave you feedback on better. Would you be interested in integrating it? And the answer was always yes, because we'd already demonstrated our kind of curiosity and dedication to what they were doing. I think that's one thing we did better than anyone. We were just a bunch of nerds on Discord wanting to make this happen or willing it into existence effectively. And then over the years, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of companies looked at it and said either A, it's going to be really hard to compete with Live because they're already in the biggest games. So we're going to have to convince those developers to integrate a similar SDK for less of the gain. And of course, you said there's no money in it. I think that's been pretty clear. We've been very open about that with the community as well. So probably a combination of the two. We were really good entrenchment by the time that became a thing, and then of course the people looking at the market might realize that this is going to be really hard for us to do well.
Yeah. So yeah, and so you mentioned some competitors. I worked with one of your competitors early on and convinced them that it was going to be hard for them to make money, frankly, in the space, and they wound up pivoting and going to some other areas. Um,
That was
what,
Mixcast, right?
Mixcast, yeah.
I know them well. They're great
Yeah,
folks.
yeah, they're
Love their bits.
great people.
Yeah.
And so, why was it? And obviously, Meta was trying to build this into their platform. What was it that made it difficult for Meta? Let's just talk about Meta because ultimately that's where it landed, right? Why weren't they able to replicate what you've done?
I think they did. They had a solution that worked fairly well. So I can't really speak to what happened internally at Meta and their
Yeah,
attempts
no,
at
just your
reaching.
observation though, as a
Yeah.
competitor, like looking at it from an arm's distance at the time, right?
Yeah, so I think for one, our feature set was just much richer and much more complete. You could do more with Liv. Over the years, we released virtual camera support, so you could control virtual cameras in the game, avatar support, stream utilities like stream chat and stream alerts, really the whole suite if you want to make great content. And Meta didn't have that. They also at some point released a really thoughtful solution, which just didn't work at the time that well because of hardware constraints. And that was being able to just use a phone on the Meta Quest app. Take your phone out, do background removal using a machine learning model, and then anyone can film a mixed reality video. And we also released a mobile app for that. And our learning, along with Meta's learning, was that with the limitation on the device, which is they're really low powered and games typically use most of the performance budget, and the state of these phones back then and the machine learning models that we could find to run on these devices to remove the background just didn't result in great content. And
Yeah,
so that mobile solution never worked for Meta, neither did it work for us. We shut that down within 4 months of launching it.
yeah, interesting.
And then on the PC side, we were just in every game. Now, what did happen, what I can speak to is this. At some point, and you must have followed this last 2 years, 3 years, there was a bunch of layoffs at Meta. They left 13,000 some people were let go. And in that process, they seem to have let go some of the key people working on these solutions and then reshuffled the other ones to work on more important initiatives according to them. And so there was a period of time where the tooling was stale, and then also a period of time where the tooling actually broke. And in that 6 month period or whatever it was, developers yelled really loudly at Meta. We need a solution. You've been providing us one, and it's not working, and we're already using Liv on PC. So what are we going to do about it?
Yeah,
And now we're getting to October of last year,
yeah.
which is when we got a reach out from guess no one other than the guy who I've been speaking to at Meta for 7 years and transparently sharing our thoughts and ideas with, calls us up and says, you know what, now it's time to do it. We need these solutions. We don't have the time and the resources to build ourselves right now. Can we work with you to bring Liv to the MetaQuest platform, in particular, to support our presence platform features? Hand tracking, pass through, occlusion, scene understanding, and body tracking.
So let's talk about that. Let's geek out a little bit. So the presence platform, how does Liv integrate with that? Not technically, but functionally. Like, what's that going to mean to a content creator, or maybe ideally, a mom who wants to video their kid playing something and send it to grandma or something? Like, I'm not sure where it goes, but
Yeah. So it starts with a developer solution to help developers make compelling marketing materials for their game, for the storefront, and otherwise. So right now, if you're a creator, you can use it, but it's a bit involved and it's not for everyone. Like the mom in the living room wanting to film their kid, it's not for them. It's coming, and that's part of the 2025 plan to move downstream and simplify this tool so that others can use it, not just high-end production studios. Um, so that's on that. Now, when you think about the presence platform, what we need to make sure works is if you scan your room with the sensors on the Quest to do mixed reality experiences, we need to be able to authentically capture that experience that is now both in the real world and with digital objects, which is distinctly different from fully immersive VR, as you know, where everything is just a virtual world. All you got to think about is how do you cut the human out. So that's what we think about when we think about how to support the presence platform is if the game only uses hands and has no controllers, can we still track in 6 degrees of freedom the positions of the controller? Because that's how we can align objects to your hand.
Yep.
If the headset is a MetaQuest headset and it's moving around, can we track the headset in 6DoF and create a clipping plane so that there's a foreground and a background, which is another key consideration. If someone is using the presence platform to do some sort of occlusion, for example, I have this digital object, and if I put it behind, this is not occluded, and here it is occluded. Can we make sure that that looks appropriately and renders appropriately when we film it with Liv? So it's a combination of supporting those platform-specific features and then supporting the meta runtime itself, the Oculus runtime, which historically hasn't been supported. We've only
Yeah.
supported Steam VR and PC.
Yeah. And so, and does Meta give anyone access to the things that you're going to get to integrate this, or is this, is this part of their SDK and their toolkit, or is this deeper level integration?
Entirely ours. We are simply providing support for the MetaQuest platform. The SDK remains ours. The app remains ours. It is still fully Liv's solution.
I meant on the Meta side, the integration that you're doing. Are you doing integrations with their normal SDK, or you're having to go deeper into like OS level
further
devices?
up? We don't need to deal with that at all because we've built the support for presence platform features. So the solution is if you're a developer and you've built an app or a game that uses presence platform features, we integrate into that game with our SDK
at the game development level, at Unity or Unreal or whatever.
Exactly. We have a Unity SDK and Unreal SDK. That's exactly right.
Awesome. Okay. And so what's the partnership with Meta, as much as you can say? Like, how would you characterize it?
The way we've always thought about it, which is funny. We want to help anyone in VR and AR share their experiences with their friends, family, and fans. It's critically important to Meta for obvious reasons that we've gone over, and that remains true. They pay for that work. In other words, we have a 2-year partnership, and it are renews. And in that partnership, we have a whole bunch of work that we want to do together. And as we get to the end of 2026, we're going to discuss whether or not it makes sense to continue the partnership and what else we can build. Now, we have huge aspirations. There's so much we still have to build. If I had to make if I was in Vegas today and someone said, gun to your head, make a bet, will you continue working with Meta after 2 years? I would bet everything I have on the fact that we will indeed keep working with Meta after 2 years because there's just so much work left to be done.
Or hopefully they write you a 9-figure check to acquire you and you do it from there. But
I'll call you when that happens and we'll do a barbecue.
First round's on you.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. And so, and they're doing this. They're helping. They help fund development in the ecosystem because they understand content's everything. And you create a leverage point for them and their developers to try to help them make more money by doing better conversions at the store. And so, strategically, it makes a ton of sense for them to do this. And so. And how do you? And then are you going to charge developers now? You said that's always going to be free. And so from a monetization strategy, and if you don't have an answer to this, it's totally cool. But other than having Meta help pay for development and stuff like this, at some point, what's the strategy to monetize the business?
Totally. So following the Meta announcement, which is now a marquee showcase for us, as you can imagine, there's plenty of other headset makers out there, some announced, some unannounced, that desperately need the same tooling. Many of them we've spoken to over the many years, and now we have this marquee partnership, and people are waking up that, oh shit, we probably need to get on the horse and make sure that we have these capabilities. So I expect us to do many more partnerships like the one we have with Meta, taking us to $6 to $10 million in annual revenue, which is meaningful for us. We're about break even today, so we have infinite runway. We have plenty of money in the bank. We're doing exceptionally well today, which I can't believe that I get to say after all these years. It's incredible. Now, that's just on the enterprise side. We have something coming out in August. Yeah, so July now, August-ish time frame rather. And that will be anyone on the Quest, we'll be able to pull out a virtual camera and record and stream directly from the Quest. No PC needed, no companion app needed, to either the device itself, so store the video on the headset and then to your phone, or directly to your favorite platform like TikTok, or you may have seen Meta just announced Horizon Feed, which is their new social feed for virtual content in VR. I think it's going to be some interesting stuff that we're going to do there, hopefully. And then we also have something that we haven't publicly announced too much. We've teased it a little bit, which is volumetric capture, meaning instead of capturing 2D video like we have so far, we are capturing the entire 3D scene. And I'll give you the thought experiment here. Bob, do you play any games, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, so give me an example of a game you're playing or have played.
The new Ubisoft Prince of Persia, right? VR
Perfect.
game. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Which made me sick as fuck, I just want to say.
We'll take a Ubisoft game. Let's take Assassin's Creed, right? Everyone knows Assassin's Creed.
Oh, that was Assassin's Creed. I think, well, Prince of Persia is part of the Assassin's Creed one. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so Assassin's Creed is a great example of a game. It's a 3D game built in a 3D engine, but when you play Assassin's Creed, you're typically playing the game on a monitor of some kind. If you make a video from Assassin's Creed to put on YouTube, and I go to YouTube and watch that video, I'm watching a 3D game built in a 3D engine, but I'm watching it on a monitor.
Yep.
So the player experience and the viewer experience are the same format. But let's look at VR now. For the first time since the invention of gaming, my experience is I'm in sixth off. I'm fully immersed. I am quote unquote inside the game. And yet today, all we've done for the last 7 years is create 2D video. So for the first time ever, the player experience and the viewer experience are in fundamentally different formats. That's what we're fixing with our new product. Comes out in 2025. Anyone on a Quest and hopefully soon other headsets will be able to record volumetric video, and upload and stream directly to our platform. So now, if you're a Gorilla Tag player and you're a Gorilla Tag famous creator like J-Man Curly, you can record, upload directly to your friends in VR, and then as a viewer, you get to step into that scene. You get to stand right next to your favorite creator. You can put the video on your hand. You can make the video giant and stand on the shoulder of your favorite creator. You get to engage with content in the format that it's meant to be engaged with in VR, which is in the same format as we experience it when we play. Parity between viewer and player.
And so,
that's
amazing.
YouTube and Twitch for VR.
And what's the hardware required to capture that? Because what I hear you saying is you're going to capture it through the headset, but I'm struggling to see how that's possible.
That's where the magic happens. That's where we have brilliant fucking engineers who are way better at this than I will ever be. But fundamentally, what we have done is we spawn one or many cameras, depending on the capabilities of the device. We actually record standard video, RGB, but we also capture depth. So we capture RGB plus D, plus the depth map, which is just a representation of the scene between 0 and 1 grayscale. And then we reconstruct that on the client side. So that means, although right now you can only capture on PC, it's just a matter of time. We're doing a whole bunch of investment to this. In 2025, you'll be able to, just on the Quest, no additional hardware, no magic, just press the record button or press the stream button. You will record those feeds. And then when you watch it back, we reconstruct it into 3D. So it's not scene graph streaming or recording the mesh or anything crazy like that. It's just video. But it's video on steroids.
Yeah, so you're basically re-rendering the scene, and maybe rendering's not the right technical term, based on the depth sensor data, the camera feeds, and then the in-game video.
I'll give you an analogy that everyone at home will be able to relate to. Imagine the game or app you're in is a shoebox, completely black. You can't see anything, but everything that's in that scene is inside the shoebox. You then take a camera, and the camera acts like a flashlight. You start depending where the camera is looking, it shines its light onto the scene. Wherever we can see from that light, wherever that light lights up, is what we capture. Now, then you would say, well, if I have a light here and I'm shining the light, that's going to cast a shadow. It does indeed. What do you do then? Well, you put a camera on the other side. Now you've covered the shadow. And that's how the system works. It's effectively lighting the scene with cameras. And
virtual cameras.
virtual cameras. Not exclusively, although right now it's just virtual cameras, but eventually you'll be able to just inject your volumetric recording of yourself into the scene, which is sort of funny enough, full circle. At some point, we'll be doing mixed reality in volumetric, where the real human is volumetric inside a volumetric game. So
Yeah.
there's a big vision to get to.
And I would imagine the what's happening with the the volumetric cameras in the smartphones and the chipsets getting more and more and more powerful and now being AI capable. I'm assuming that at some point in the future, in the next 3 or 4 years,
Yeah.
everybody's going to have a capable volumetric capture device in their pocket.
There's some interesting developments here in the AI world. So you may have seen neural radiance fields and Gaussian splats, taking a couple of pictures and recreating the scene full 3D.
Yeah.
That stuff is terrific, really cool, really interesting. However, it's so far from being primetime ready for video that it's something we're working towards. We think of us as an applied research company. We don't do the research ourselves. We wait until it's available to us downstream, and then we apply those models to our work. I will say one thing. The one thing important to mention is on these iPhones, we have these now stereo cameras to film stereoscopic video. That is not volumetric. That is just two eyes, left and right, which gives you that perceived depth. But you
Yep.
can't look around the scene or walk around or do anything magical there. It's a video with some depth, like a 3D video. Whereas what we're doing is truly volumetric. It's a scene. You can do anything. You can scale it up, scale it down. You can jump in. I mean,
Yeah.
it's super fucking cool. It's like
Yeah.
I'm super
Amazing.
nerdy about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Amazing. So, so the meta deal. I want to kind of come back to that and really close with relationship management is one of the challenges of being human. Whether it's family relationships, intimate relationships, friend relationships, business relationships, and so you managed a personal business relationship with an executive at a big company that's gone through massive management changes, strategy changes over a 7-year period. What advice would you give an entrepreneur when it comes to relationship management? Like, what are the keys to being able to manage to keep that going to where when the time is right, they call you up and they don't think you're a douchebag?
I've always thought about it as if I think back, if I close my eyes and I think about the interactions I've had with people where I leave and I feel energized and I feel happy and excited, what is it that those people did that made me feel this way? And then I've just applied that same mentality, which is for us, our approach is we love to be ultra transparent. We don't hold anything back. Whatever we know, we'll share. If you end up doing a better job than us, well done. We don't deserve to win. You should have won in the first place. I think that's really helped. I think people feel like they can trust us. They feel like our morals are in the right place. I think people think we have integrity, which I think is critically important. Something that I try and instill in everyone I work with, that is the ultimate thing. As we move through the world as individuals and as an organization, the ultimate goal is to do good by people, not to make money or anything else. That comes later. Build great stuff with great people and do so in a way that you would be proud to tell your mom about or tell your kids about. And then things will fall into place. And if they don't, which is 99% of outcomes, at least you can go to sleep feeling like you did the right thing with the right people and did right by folks. So I would say the ultimate advice I can give is just be a good person. Do good work, obviously. Hire great people. Sometimes be a bit cutthroat, but not in a malicious sense. Just in a you want to get shit done and you want to move fast, but do so not at the expense of others, just together with others. Go
Yeah.
far together.
Great fucking advice, dude. Last two questions. Where's the industry headed? Like, there's an inside joke that, VR is always 5 years away from mass adoption. And we've been saying that for 10 years. And it's still 5 years away. Where do you see the next 3 to 5 years? And do you think about mass adoption? And just where do you think the industry is headed?
I have so much to say about this, Bob. I'm glad you asked. There's a thing that's happening and it keeps happening, which is people grow up and then they forget what it's like to be 13, 12, 11, 10. And what they forget is when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, when you were 10, 11, 12, 13, the way we engaged with games, the way games became a thing in our lives. Right now in VR, the most engaged demographic is 8 to 16-year-olds. They're young boys primarily. And I think people look at that and think VR is a toy. But what they're missing is that that's where platforms are built. That's where habits and IP brand retention is built. I've always thought about it. As I've gotten older, I find myself thinking games aren't built like they used to be built before. I can't find games that made me feel the way I felt as a kid. And that's not because games have gotten worse. That's because I am a 34-year-old who has a partner and a job, and I don't have an empty brain to engage in games as deeply as I had when I was 13. And so, if you ask me where the market is going, you have this demographic that's really young. They're gamers and they're growing up on social first platforms like Roblox and on their phones. Everything is connected and they're going to age up. And when they age up, they're going to become power purchasers of apps and games and devices in VR and AR. And guess what? When they have younger siblings, guess what their siblings are going to play? The things that their older siblings are playing, which is exactly how it worked in my family for what it's worth. So it's gonna take some time. We've been delusional about this, as I'm sure you have. 5 years is it's always 5 years, but I think we're starting to see that almost like iPhone-like growth trajectory. Jack Soslow from Andreessen has a terrific thread on X about this. I encourage you all to go look it up. They've done a terrific job, really, like honing down where the market is and what kind of applications and games are popular. Unsurprisingly, the most popular games are games played by young boys, primarily young boys, young kids. So I think that's going to continue to be the case for a while. And then you also have a really interesting subsection of fitness. I'm sweating like crazy right now, not because I'm in VR, but it's boiling in Lisbon today and I have no AC. So I'm sorry about that. But fitness is a massive use case for VR too. Making fitness fun is something I think a lot of people want, to be able to be healthy and get it active. So I expect that to continue. And then you'll start to see a lot of productivity apps come into life as the Apple Vision Pro starts moving downstream in price and moves from a developer kit to a consumer device. The idea that you can have multi-screens and replace your monitor, I think, is obvious to everyone. We have to figure out input modalities. Right now, one of my pet peeves in VR is on my PC, when I'm done here, if I want to go play a game, I alt-tab and I'm in a game. It's that quick. If I want to go into Excel, I click on a tab, I'm in Excel. In VR right now, everything is a hassle. It's like
especially with the Quest, it's horrible. It's like it took me an hour to download updates and da da da, and then my batteries were dead. It was just every time I want to use it, it's an hour project.
Exactly. So I think what we'll see is two ends of the spectrum. You got young kids who are finding themselves loving these social games that they're playing with their friends. And the best way to think about that is they've replaced the playground with VR.
Yeah.
If you go into Gorilla Tag and you just listen, you close your eyes and you just listen, what you hear is a children's playground. It's like going to the park and being at the swings and seeing kids run around and yell at each other. That's exactly how Gorilla
Such
Tag
a great metaphor.
And then on the other end, you have productivity apps, training and simulations, all the other stuff that is you can meaningfully benefit from being spatially immersed, whether that's because of telepresence reasons or because of like Shapes XR is a great example. Terrific prototyping application that lets you build things natively in the environment you're going to experience them in. I think that's going to be really powerful too. I don't know when we're going to be using VR to do work. I think for that, ergonomics have to get infinitely better. They're just so far, especially the Vision Pro. It's not comfortable right now.
How did that happen?
I just had a call with Apple, so I shouldn't say this. Yeah, I mean, it's a dev kit. I would have to, if I had to guess, I don't think a lot of people at Apple are using the device. And I think that's true in Meta too. I mean, that's natural. It's not a device for adults. We're set in our ways. When you're in your mid 30s and above, we're not going to go, like, I'll give you an example. My granddad, just as a quick analogy, my granddad, when he passed, his favorite pastime hobby was listening to the fucking radio. That's not because radio is the best shit out there. That's because he grew up listening to the radio. That's what happens. And that's what's going to continue to happen.
Yeah.
And it's just that we have to, it's like a population pyramid shift.
It's a generational shift, right? Absolutely.
Yeah. And VR and AR are generational products.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. And so the last thing is, all of the stuff happening in virtual reality and the and distraction economy and the fact that we spend 6 to 8 hours a day already immersed on our phones and media, 12 hours a day in media, 6 hours on our phones, and the power of virtual reality to capture and hold attention. We all have experienced the time warp, right? Where you get in VR and you play for an hour and it felt like 15 minutes. How, as humans, and maybe this, and maybe it's a generational question, as these new generations become virtual, go from digital natives to virtual natives, what does it mean? What is it going to mean to be human? Like, how is it going to shift the definition of reality, right? Because we're already in this period of time where what's real, what's not, what's truth, what's false, what's real, what's virtual. I'm curious your take on how this is all going to impact what it means to be human.
Yeah, that's a great question. How do I put this bluntly? When I grew up, when you're a refugee Arabic kid in Sweden, which is where I grew up, where everyone's blonde, tall, and blue-eyed, and you're not, I found that in games, people didn't really know what I looked like. They just knew what I did, and that was liberating. And as a result, even though I'm past generation, I have made some of my best friends online. Our CTO, who's a good friend of mine, we met online. And I think that's going to continue to happen. The things that we take for granted, what you can do and the kind of connections you can build online is completely being uprooted. And that's certainly true with kids today as well. The other thing that's interesting is if you go into Roblox or anything else today, everyone is represented as an avatar. And I think that's going to continue to be very, very true. Even if the avatar is fairly lifelike, like the Apple Vision Pro version, you're going to have not just one skin that you can put on. You can have many, many different skins for many, many different situations. That's probably going to continue too. What I don't know is, I would agree. I think abusing social media is not healthy for you. I've seen it. I know people, even in our industry, who I can tell that it's unhealthy for them. And if I had kids, I wouldn't let them on social media until they're a certain age. What will happen with VR, I'm not sure. But what I will say is I think VR has a terrific opportunity to connect people, just like I think Facebook did connect people. The reason Facebook works is we have an innate desire to connect with others and get validation from others. It's not a bad thing. It's just how humans work. And that's not going away. Evolution takes far too long for that to change overnight. So we are going to be subject to our desires and flaws as humans, if you will. And the technology is going to allow us to do more of the things that we want to do, like connect with others, seek validation from others. And hopefully, at least with VR, we get to reintroduce some of the social cues that exist in the real world.
Yeah.
For example, if I'm looking at you while I'm speaking, if I'm touching your arm, those things feel real in VR. I know everyone's felt it. If you're in VR, I had this happen to me the first time. So I was playing a game with a 13-year-old years ago, and he came up and he was trying to like grab me in my body. I could feel like ghost sensation. That's really powerful. So I have high hopes for it. I think VR as a telepresence, the ultimate telepresence platform, is going to allow us to connect better. We could have done this podcast sitting in a similar space. I would have been able to point things out. We could have had a more rich experience together. So I'm really hopeful about that. I don't know what the social implications will be for things like dating and human connection. I think that's going to get really bizarre and also really interesting. And I'm here
Yeah.
for it. I'm an optimist. I'm an accelerationist. I want this to happen. I think only good things come from technology, even if there's some negative aspects with it. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think a lot of people tend to think that way when they're kind of binary in their thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Great thoughts. I appreciate them. Yeah, cool. Thank you so much. How do people learn more about Liv and follow you?
Live.tv website, live on X or Twitter, live on Facebook, live on YouTube, live on Twitch, LIV. Hop into our Discord. Our team is super helpful and friendly. If you're a game developer or an app developer and you want to use Live, let us know. Like I said, it's free. We'd love to help out. We can help connect you to creators if you need some extra marketing oomph. If you have any issues, let us know. Otherwise, I don't really exist online beyond these podcasts and LinkedIn, so I don't have any social media. Don't follow me. Follow the team. They're all amazing. And thank you, Bob. I really
Well,
appreciate it.
Yeah, look, I appreciate you, the work you and your team has done, and the great advice, and the way you're representing the community is top notch. And so I thank you on behalf of everybody in the VR community and those yet to join. Keep
Hey,
up the
and
great work.
ditto. If anything, ditto. The same can be said about you, Bob. You've been around for a long time. We've met many, many times over the years. You've done terrific work for the LBVR and FEC space and beyond.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Don't go away, Dr. Doom. I'm going to sign off and I'm going to come back. I'm not sure what to say. That was maybe my favorite deep dive yet. I hope you enjoyed it. Follow the show at beingvirtual.tv. You know where to find me. I'm on LinkedIn mostly, bobcooney.com. If you're interested in location-based VR, make sure to check out the vrcollective.com online, the biggest directory of virtual reality products for location-based entertainment. All my insights, all my thinking, all my research live there now. I hope to see you on the next Being Virtual show. I'm Bob, and we'll talk to you later.